Hi, everyone, and welcome to November's Women's Wednesday. We're joined by Kelli Jolly from Hands for Hunger. Her bio should be in the chat, if not now, then in a few seconds. Kelli, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I am Kelli Jolly, and I'm here on behalf of Hands for Hunger. I am the outreach coordinator. I'm the newest member of staff, and I've been with them since June of this year. But like I was telling those who were here earlier, that we've, done a lot, even in the past 5 months. And so I feel confident in sharing with you today. I've also, liaised with the other staff members. We are a small team, and they've given some good information and said, tell you hello, wish you all the best. Our executive director, Keisha Ellis, is actually a political science lecturer at UB, and she's in a lecture at this time. But I'm here. I'm the outreach coordinator, and I'll share as best as I can from my perspective.
I'm sure it'll be great. We're looking forward to it. Um, could you talk a bit about what Hands for Hunger is and maybe a bit more about your role?
Okay. Well, Hands for Hunger is an organization, it's a nonprofit, and we basically help fight food insecurity in the Bahamas. And we do that through our H for H pantry, and we'll see and hear some more of that later on. We feed there are over 5,000 persons registered, and it's definitely more than that because every single day it increases. And then we do school pantries, which is what I've been doing this week. Every month we deliver food items that like soups and cup noodles and snacks that can be warmed up or easily given to the students who don't have lunch. And so that's something I'm very proud of to be a part of, to go around to the schools and to distribute those items on a monthly basis. We've done community markets, which is a special setup providing over 1,000 families in various communities with fresh fruits, vegetables, bread, eggs, and nutritious foods. And it also shows our impact in terms of supporting local farmers in terms of our outreach. There's family island support coming from the community markets, but also on a regular basis from our pantry, sending items on the boat. And they've also done trips to certain family islands to specifically take grocery items in bulk to those communities. There are agency support. We serve over 40 agencies or partner with over 40 agencies with our trucks on the road 6 days a week. So we work closely with Jason and Mario, our truck drivers, and between school pantry, regular pantry donations from Cisco and Asa H. Pritchard and those, and also our cooked food donors like Atlantis. We also distribute food directly to agencies like the Children's Emergency Hostel, like BASH and Teen Challenge and those places, the Salvation Army, um, Miss Laura's Hilltop Cottage that feeds the community, things like that. Lots of churches. Um, so that's agency support, and also our summer lunches, where we budget every year for certain summer programs that feed kids for 2, 2, 3, 4 weeks during the summer months, and we would provide their lunch through our caterers that we support.
That's a lot of work, a lot of necessary work. Could I ask what drew you to the organization?
Well, Hands for Hunger, I believe I would have come to hear more about it during the pandemic. And so it's always been an organization that I admired. And, as luck and fate and destiny would have it, a position became available, which I was very attracted to. in terms of, you know, just being a part of that team and then sitting down with the director and, you know, hearing firsthand what they do. I felt it was almost hand carved for me. And so anything that has to do with hands-on service in community, I am drawn to social justice, addressing marginalized communities, overcoming oppression. I am a full-time Methodist minister in pastoral care of two congregations. And so I'm used to my whole life being involved in feeding programs and soup kitchens and things like that. And so it was really a challenge for me. I was looking for a space to further be present in the community, not just like side by side with organizations that are not necessarily churches, but to actually be a part of them and to see what they do. And Hands for Hunger was at the right place, the right time, and it was the right fit. So I'm thankful for this.
And I'm sure a lot of people are thankful for the work that you guys do. That's great. You, before we get to that, could you walk us through what the term food insecurity means for people who might not be familiar?
Okay. Well, food insecurity can mean different things to different people, or mostly it means you're at risk for not having your food needs met. And so we can be talking about families who suddenly during a pandemic didn't have the financial resources to buy the groceries that they normally would. We can be talking about food insecurity can affect, like we said before, school children who are in an environment where they expect to have lunch at a certain time during the school day, but their parents might not necessarily have the funds to give them or the snacks, the funds to purchase snacks. But food insecurity, I'm learning more and more as I work with Hands for Hunger, can be faced by almost anyone. Um, for example, if you are someone who is vegan or vegetarian and you're in a specific financial bracket, or even not having the proper resources around you, not having the the wherewithal or the know-how in terms of your own nutrition, that could result in food insecurity. Um, Not being, because we know that sometimes vegetarian and vegan food, you know, or healthy food is less accessible, more expensive, things like that. But on a broader basis, on the most simple, the simple basis, it's what we address. I think of our food rescue where we just give food to people who do not have food. They're facing food insecurity because they just don't have food.
You mentioned that, you know, you first were drawn to Hands for Hunger during the pandemic. One of the questions that we had was, how has the issue of food insecurity worsened or magnified during and since Hurricane Dorian, as well as the pandemic? So both of those.
Okay, so this is something that I definitely had to consult with my colleagues on because I wasn't there with them during the pandemic. And that's one of the pivotal times that their mission kind of shifted and grew in some ways. So when the pandemic hit and forced the closure of hotels and restaurants in the Bahamas, because we know that they mostly started off in 2008 as a food rescue source, and that's what they mostly did. And so with the closure of hotels and restaurants, the model of food rescue had to be reassessed. And in June 2020, Hands for Hunger joined the National Food Distribution Task Force and delivered food boxes directly to the doorstep of families in need. Each box contained meat, fresh fruits, fish. They had to find a way to continue to provide nutritious food to people in need. And so this is actually how the Hands for Hunger Pantry was born. With so many people out of work, they saw that food insecurity had many faces, and the people who came for assistance had a variety of backgrounds and needs. And so, with what we do, we know that it takes courage to ask for help. And Hands for Hunger wanted to meet that courage with compassion and respect. And so, the pantry being born, it revolutionized the way that we think about food assistance in the Bahamas. And the pantry has a theme: with choice comes dignity. And so the approach of the pantry focuses on promoting dignity and autonomy within our clients by allowing them the freedom to choose items that they and their families would most like. So let me just explain. So you would, I've seen this because I also, that's part of my job, to work closely with the pantry. And particularly on Fridays, I'm at the pantry all day. And you see people come in there, especially for the first time, and they expect a struggle. They expect a long wait. They expect lines. They expect attitudes and poor behavior. And so what happens is you sign up for the pantry online, or you make a call to the pantry. You're given an assessment of what your needs may be in terms of long-term food assistance or one-time food assistance. And you're given an appointment so that any given day, so if I'm there on a Friday, you'll have maybe 10 to 15 persons come in, beginning from, well, we're open from 9 to 3, and the appointments probably start like from 10 o'clock, and they're in 15-minute or 20-minute increments. And so normally you wouldn't be in the pantry with other clients. You come for your 10 o'clock appointments, and by 10:15, 10:20, you're out. It's set up just like a food store, but the shelves have lists in terms of you can take two tuna or a tuna and a mackerel. You can take a corn and a beet, or a peas and a mixed veg, or something like that. And you go around in the different food groups in that same manner. And you go from there. And so this is revolutionary when we think of the way that, people are used to receiving help and lining up outside of buildings for everybody to see you, and, just kind of being treated any and every way sometimes. And I think that's a fantastic thing that was born out of such a terrible thing called the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I noticed that people, they don't ask for help because of a fear of judgment, and you guys have removed that. So that's beautiful. So that is how you guys changed your approach after the pandemic. Did you notice that or did the organization notice that there was increased need or changes in need at all during the pandemic?
You mean from before the pandemic into
Right.
the
So was there an increased rate of food insecurity due to Dorian or the pandemic, or is that
Well,
sort of on?
I imagine so, because of the widespread job loss and the not knowing of everything, people not knowing when they would be going back to work, how many days they would work, things like that. And so it would have been good to have a source where you could say, okay, right now I don't have a job, and this month my family needs to be fed. But I do know that it has been said that pre-pandemic, the giving in terms of the food rescue has changed a lot. And that goes with all of the economic strain that has been placed on us since then, that even vendors who want to give and have wanted to give are not able sometimes to give the way they used to. Even the hot meal place that we normally go, whereas I think it's a lot when I go with Jason 1 or 2 days and get 60 to 70 pans of food. But for him to say, Kelly, pre-pandemic, I could have done this 5 days a week. to get 60, 70, up to 150 pounds of food to take and distribute. And so that's why Hands for Hunger has to keep getting creative, and
Mm,
had to keep getting creative at that point in terms of how we serve the community.
wow. How do you balance meeting the needs of today with building a food secure Bahamas in the long term? Or is that a far off sort of abstract concept at the moment?
You know what? I'm learning that it doesn't have to be far off and abstract, because we keep saying it that the mission is to eradicate food insecurity, to eradicate hunger in the Bahamas. And I don't think it's impossible. Um, in terms of the first part of the question, um, the immediate thing is always to address what people need right now. And like I said before, if somebody doesn't have the job this month, or whatever the reason is, that's what's important at the start. That's what's going to create the most impact, to give the food, to get the appointment and to give the food. And we keep reassessing the need from there. Um, Also, what's important is the idea that it's not impossible, because all of us have the ability to share whatever it is we have. There are a lot of us that have in the Bahamas even more than we need. We're a nation of excess, and we can be a nation of waste. And that's the whole idea behind Hands for Hunger, to take what has the potential to be waste. It's not waste, but it's regular good food, and to prevent that from being waste by taking that and distributing it somewhere where there is potential for lack and where there is a need. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So that's the important thing. And that's the thing that in the long run, I believe will make the difference.
The last question to follow that up, it's sustainability. So looking at sustainable development goals and the connection between those goals, what needs to happen at the national level, so above us, above you,
Mhm.
to end hunger and achieve food security for the Bahamas?
Mhm. Boy, that's one. Well, like I said, we all looked at some of these questions, and to bring it back to a simple level that we all can relate to, we all need to begin, or we all need to see less greed, less hoarding of resources. Um, we saw where Hands for Hunger worked hand in hand, with the government for a little while during the pandemic, out of the need to feed people. But Hands for Hunger is not a government-related organization. It's not politically aligned in any way. And so at the national level, personally, I think with all things, anything that you ask me about in terms of what we lack, it goes back to me for me to empathy, um and being able to put ourselves in the place of other people. And like I said, we can be a hoarding nation. We have some greedy people, but we also have some very generous people. And that's how Hands for Hunger continues to move forward. So it would be good to see on a national level more of the persons who have excess or who just have enough to share, to do that, whether it's financial resources or if it's their time or it's literal food. And yeah, and we do see a lot of that. I know that the average person might think that there isn't a lot happening, but trust me, the people who are feeling it, who need it, people who we serve, they can see it through
Mhm.
the church, just the churches in the community, that partner with Hands for Hunger, and it's not a big thing in the newspaper. It's not on the talk shows, but they feed people every week, not just one or two churches. And this time of the year, harvest time, they collect things, and they genuinely care about giving people and making sure that they eat. The companies that invest in food for our pantry takeovers. You will have a major company that will say, we want to do a pantry takeover in November. And so they bring like 8 to 10 people, and they also order pallets of food from Cisco or Asa H, and they come and they stock our shelves. And then that's seen in different ways. So corporate giving is very big. You see those types of corporate giving when we have Paradise Plates, which is our main fundraiser. And ongoing through the year, the way that we have been provided with trucks and other things that help the company keep running at the standard that we have been running. I hope that addressed the question.
No, it sure did. And I find that empathy is the answer to a lot of these big problems. And when you were talking, I recalled an interview that one of your team members did with Jerome Sawyer on the record. And one of the things that stood out was she talked about how in the Bahamas specifically, because of the issue of hoarding, there will be pockets of places with an abundance right next to what you would call a food desert. And so she said it's not, a lot of the times it's not a lack of resource, it's a lack of putting the resources in the right hands. And that's the work that you guys are doing, and that's amazing. I'd like to open the floor for questions. So if you're in the Zoom and you're interested in unmuting yourself, you can do that. If not, you can pop your question into the chat, or if you're on Facebook, you can put it in the comments. I see one question. If you're not involved in a church and are disadvantaged or find yourself suddenly in a very economically challenged circumstance, but you're not religious, how do you hear about the wonderful kindness and generosity of Hands for Hunger? Is there a lot of widespread publicity about what you offer and how to access it?
Because of where I stand, I think it's widespread, but there's always room for wider spread. Because you always come across even persons like Penny who don't exactly know how to access the resources. And just as Hands for Hunger is not aligned with any political party, Hands for Hunger isn't aligned with any religious entity. It's just I mentioned that, especially now that I've been seeing a lot of letters from churches that this is what they do. But our pantry is open and accessible for anyone, any kind of person, and as well as, any of the services that we offer. It's this organization, which is one thing that I love, doesn't discriminate against anyone for any reason. And that's not just a statement. It's something that I see every day. I spoke earlier about what people expect when they come in there. They expect hassle and things that they see at the hands of other organizations or more public sources. But Hands for Hunger, we pride ourselves, and we're a small team, only 7 persons. And so I think that makes it easier to regulate, as well as our volunteers know our stance, and they are people who come on with the same kind of quality of heart. So in short, our pantry, you call the number at the pantry and I will put it here in the chat, or you go quickest on Hands for Hunger. It's up here as well. Alicia put it in the chat, handsforhunger.org. and you click the part where you can access food, and or there's also a volunteer link, there's also a donate link, things like that. And I have a little video I could share as well, Jessica, at some point,
Sure.
so persons can see.
We have one question on the Facebook page, and then maybe we could go to your video. Are there facilities in the Bahamas where we can easily donate homegrown food?
Facilities in the Bahamas. Yes. So all of our agencies are like open to receiving, usually at any given time. Like I mentioned, the Children's Emergency Hostel, BASH, Teen Challenge, PACE, SHORE, things like that. And so if you wanted to give homegrown food directly to them, I don't see them rejecting it. What's one I always think of? The Prison Fellowship, the gentlemen that are in transition from coming out of prison into ordinary life, and they live together, and we often take them cooked food, and I'm sure vegetables or homegrown food, as well as we would be happy to receive them at our pantry as well, so we can also receive the food.
So the family islands that are involved in Hands for Hunger, are they volunteer farmers only? What islands have a Hands for Hunger committee? And if there aren't any, are you thinking of branching out to the family islands?
Yes, so let me get that info up. They have been to certain islands to do market days. I think the most recent one was Andros. This was right after I interviewed and just before I started. This was, let's say, May.
Okay.
And so they would have gone to Andros, when they went to Luther, they put the trucks on the boat, took the boxes of produce and groceries and things, and held a market where persons can come just like our pantry to receive items without paying for anything. But also they would have distributed boxes of groceries and packages throughout the length and breadth of the island. So the H4H community markets have expanded to Eleuthera, Acklins, Long Island, and Andros, where we have distributed thousands of nutritious food boxes to families who have been identified as food insecure by community leaders in various settlements throughout each island. Now, just how we have the persons come into the pantry on a monthly basis, some of them, for food, there's also boxes that are packed and sent on the boat to certain islands that they haven't, because I don't think I mentioned Grand Bahama, but I know there are families in Grand Bahama that are frequently receiving these boxes from the pantry. So yes, and they are expanding, because there's always talk about what island we're going to next.
That's great. How often, or is it only Grand Bahama that are receiving these prepackaged boxes?
No, I'm pretty sure I've heard them send things to Long Island, even though they've been to Long Island, Eleuthera, different islands. Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Penny asked, how do you raise your money? Do you get any money from the government for the services that you provide?
So it's not a government funded organization. It's a nonprofit and it's grant funded. And so a lot of those grants go towards stocking our pantry. I don't know if you realize, like people realize in normal conversation, that our pantry, we keep restocking that with the money that we have, as well as persons, individuals, and companies will come in and do the stocking of the shelves. But we regularly buy our own food to stock the pantries. Like I said, we support local farmers as well. So also Paradise Plates, I mentioned, is our major fundraiser each year, which we had this year in September. which was a wonderful experience. And so that's part of how our fundraising goes.
Is fundraising difficult? That seems like a silly question.
Not a silly question. It's a broad concept with Hands for Hunger. Because now, I'm coming from two different types of contexts.
Mm,
So fundraising in terms of a nonprofit or this type of nonprofit is kind of different from fundraising as I know it in church. Um, is it difficult? Paradise Plates is a lot of work. So it's difficult in that aspect. We spend months and months planning meetings upon meetings and detail upon detail, getting ready to host the biggest party of the year in Nassau and making it bringing it to a new standard every single year. And that being our major fundraiser, yes, it's I don't know if difficult is the word, but it takes a lot of hard work. And I believe that keeping Hands for Hunger at this standard, even beyond just that event, Paradise Plates, it takes a lot of hard work. It takes accountability, a
mm.
lot of reporting, a lot of record keeping, every single thing in order to keep your, the business clean and the work clean and where it needs to be.
So on Facebook, someone asked, well, Nassau is a pain to get around. Have transport problems been an obstacle in receiving or donating food?
It's been one of those things that could be challenging for people. We recognize that the pantry is located on Carmichael Road, which is convenient for some people, but very inconvenient for others. Yeah. So like I said, even the boxes that are shipped to the family island, that's a very obvious like barrier. But
Mm,
then you have some people who are, for example, wheelchair bound and don't necessarily have somebody close to them they can send stuff to. And so um, I know of instances where we've set up a delivery to them, but generally, we're not a delivery kind of service anymore, but we have to we have to make room for those who can't access the stuff. And so there's also when you make appointments and you don't have the trans and things like that, you can write a letter and let somebody else come and collect for you, things like that. But special cases, we've gone out of our way to make sure people can get it.
so it's an obstacle, but it's being managed. It's
It's
fair to say.
workable. So it's one of those things where we can't let the obstacle or pride, it's like the pride we spoke about. We can't, it's not necessary to let that get in between you and your food items because we could work it out.
Um, any more questions? Feel free to unmute yourself, or you can type it in the chat. I did have one while we're waiting for other people. Is there a moment in your time working for Hands for Hunger that you could say has been particularly impactful for you, meaningful?
Yes. I spoke about the school pantries, um, something that I'm proud to be a part of. I remember being a school kid, and it's hard to imagine being a child, especially we do it in 15 primary and high schools, you know, um, and you look at the kids and all that they have to go through every day, in terms of socially, and to not have lunch shouldn't be one of them. Um, they shouldn't have to take on the burden of that their parents take on and not having, the financial means or for whatever reason. And so knowing that they could go to their guidance counselor and get a hot lunch, not even just some chips or cookies. We don't do chips really. Um, we do hot lunch, soups and noodles and things like that. And just as simple as like a snack, when we bring those popcorns, they have popcorn that the guidance counselor can pop for them and give to their class. And it's just something as simple as that. So I think that's been one of the most impactful things for me. Other than that, it's been working in the pantry with the clients that come in, seeing the single mothers, seeing those who are not, I guess, at the some persons not at the social, the mental or level of ability of other persons that come in and still have a need and can get their items, seeing the families that support them and help them, seeing our pantry manager, Mrs. Stacy Ann Joaquin, who has been doing this since the pandemic, know their names and their backgrounds and life story and how we just, well, for lack of a better word, minister to them, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah.
It's nice to see the empathy and compassion we need more of in the world. Um, is there something that you would like for everyone to know about the work that you do, the organization, or anything that we didn't sort of cover in a question?
Just that as a new outreach coordinator, I am always open and looking for ways to connect us to community even more. We are having, again, our director, Keisha Ellis, is always, coming up with new ways to look at food insecurity. And, recently breastfeeding has come up, and it's a way of addressing food insecurity, right? Because, you have the baby on the breast milk and that's free. Um, and you don't have to worry about contaminated formulas or things that aren't good for the baby. And so in December, I'm trying to set up I have to keep trying to stop saying demonstration of breastfeeding. It's a talk by the person who is the leader of the Bahamas Breastfeeding Network, which is going to be really cool if we could have the right people come in, So things like that. I'm always looking for new ways to look at food insecurity and engage with the community, even outside of those who might have immediate food needs.
You mentioned one upcoming event. Are there any other events in the near future or conversations in food security or volunteer opportunities that might be upcoming?
There's a link, there's a form that I'm going to try and share also for our volunteer form.
Okay.
We do have a lot, like I said, you wouldn't know it, but so many companies fill slots for volunteer work. But we do have volunteers that are regular in the pantry, and say if I'm off if they know they're off on a Thursday, so they may promise Miss Stacy to be in there two Thursdays out of the month, and they actually help to serve clients. Um, Things like that. So there are volunteer opportunities. Sometimes there are spaces for students who are needing community service hours, although we encourage especially young children, because we don't really have, like, in terms of liability, don't want a lot of young children in the pantry, but we encourage them to do food drives. That's one of the ways that we engage with volunteers. You can do a food drive, anybody, not a student. You can do it with your family, your friends, your church, your work circle, and if you need community service hours, you can record the time that say if your drive goes on longer than a week. You can collect groceries, solicit groceries from friends and things, and collect them. And then when you finish, bring them to the pantry and get your photo op and get your volunteer hours signed, or just give to the pantry. Anybody can do that at any time, but I'll share the link for the volunteer form.
Okay, the link will be great. So anybody could walk up to the pantry to donate items at any time. Well, when you're
I would
open.
say reach out to us first, because then remember it's about keeping the privacy of our clients too. So we don't want it to be too crowded, but reach out to us and let us schedule a good time to drop off items that you donate.
That's good information to have. Um, are there local advocacy groups focused on engaging the government and private sector for legislative and policy reform?
Not sure if this question is entirely for me. Um, local advocacy engaging. I mean, I would say yes, but I'm not so sure how it relates to me at this time.
Okay. So that would be sort of in your orbit. That's not the work you do.
Yeah.
You're on the ground.
Um, I wouldn't say it's not. I would say I personally would need to find out more information about, what's happening. Yeah.
Is Hands for Hunger working with or aware of any of them?
Organizations. Well, I know that ORG has reached out to me and they've done work before with Hands for Hunger. So actually any organization that well, we always vet organizations as well, in terms of our values and how they align. But yeah, anybody can reach out in terms of collaborating on a given project. I don't think that's a problem.
I guess kind of related to that question, I'm wondering about the work that Hands for Hunger does is very immediate, right? Like people have this need today. We're gonna fill this need today. So I wonder if there's anything that Hands for Hunger is doing that's more long term or addressing that structural issue of food insecurity, whether that's with the government or just thinking of your own initiatives, like helping people who have the space to have a little garden or like anything like that that is also in the mix with what you're doing.
Yes, and specifically like with the schools, we have the Helping Hands clubs in some schools, and schools that reach out in terms of their project and community service. Some of them have gardens, and we encourage them to brainstorm in that light in terms of how can you address food insecurity in your immediate space, in your neighborhoods, things like that. Um, Something else I thought of. Yeah, I'll go with that for now. But Hands for Hunger is always, so we've had not, outside of Paradise Plate. Paradise Plate is the fundraiser, but Food for Thought, that's a type of conference that they've had before in terms of inviting these agencies and other potential partners, and I would venture to say government entities to see how we could partner to move forward. I know they've had that. And we've also been looking to doing a food insecurity conference. And so that's one of the things that I've been charged to look into. That's never been done, as far as I know, in the Bahamas. And we are planning to see if we could attend some similar conferences before we plan one. But that's going to be international. And, you know, we're going to get ideas in terms of how to look at things long term and more meaningfully.
Alicia's very excited about the conference.
Yeah, me too.
That's going to be a great event. I don't know if this is much a question, but I did like that you talked about interview wasn't the word, that you do an assessment to assess people's needs and their diet. So I'm a vegan too. So if somebody were to just say, here's something, it's appreciated, but I like that you lead with people's needs first. So it's very compassion focused. I just wanted to say that I really like that.
I think there's always room to improve on that aspect. And a lot of the things that we, the way that we serve and the things that we're used to. Remember I said the clients are used to a certain struggle. And I think as human beings who have grown up in this society, some of us come to the space with the same, we're used to doing things a certain way, or, or interacting with people a certain way. And I think the culture at Hands for Hunger that I've seen so far, it's one that causes you to want to look at things differently. And like you said, lead with compassion and lead with the person's need first.
Related to that, and largely because of the experience that we had in doing hurricane relief after Hurricane Dorian and the kinds of questions that we got from not the people who were coming for assistance, but other people, in your sort of assessment of people's needs, is it more focused on the things that you need to provide to them, or are you trying to get them in some way to prove that they need this and that they're not just trying to like game a system?
No, okay. And it's like a point that keeps coming up and I keep forgetting, but you made it. Okay. You brought it again. But no, it's not that. It's just that some people don't need ongoing assistance. But some people really do. So I found that a lot of persons who need ongoing assistance are the single parents with children, or even parents with children, or household with lots of people, or different age groups of people. But it's definitely not that they're trying, I mean, it's not us trying to guard against people getting over the system. I remember this was specifically addressed before in an interview by one of my colleagues, that you never know who is in need of food assistance. Persons, especially Bahamians, we're good at putting on a good face and looking teensy like everybody else, right? And so we can't turn people away. It's not that we turn people away. Whatever, if somebody says they have a need, and the assessment is mostly for our records. It's for our accountability to those who help fund this nonprofit. We get the details of those who we serve, and so that we can know them in future, and things like that. And I want to go back to the point that I keep forgetting, is that not only that we try to address the immediate food needs of people, but we also, so in the pantry, there's also a board that we keep up to date with job openings, and other information that people could find useful. And like I said, in terms of the breastfeeding conference and the plans for, I know there was a school with some persons who reached out lately in terms of they are creating a special recipe book. And I want to say, Jessica, that's vegan recipes or something special like that. And so we would like them to come in and do demonstrations. And so it's trying to look at the whole person and improving the quality of life going forward, and not just fulfilling that need for now. And the thing about the assessment, in terms of some people only needing the one-time assessment, it's because there are so many people coming on board every single day that we really want to make sure that we address the needs of those who most need it, so that we don't overload the system, and we're not stifling ourselves in terms of being able to actually feed the people who can't be, who are facing food insecurity.
I was momentarily kicked out of the meeting. So if anyone sent a question in the chat in the past 2 minutes, could you resend? And again, feel free to unmute.
I know there are other organizations that are focused on the provision of food as well. Are you in direct relationship with those organizations?
Yeah, I would say so. And that's another thing about the culture of Hands for Hunger too. It's constantly reiterated that we should always keep a good relationship with other organizations that are doing similar things. And this work is not like a competition, but also even those that provide food, we give to them as well. So some organizations don't have so for example, our trucks are refrigerated. And so we're able to receive items that need refrigeration, fresh cooked foods and things like that. Not every organization that receives food can receive cooked food because of that reason, because you can't drive around Nassau with food in your truck for hours. And so there's a difference, and we work with each other and we actually help some of those organizations in terms of delivering food to them, and then they can distribute it to their people.
With the families that come in, and you mentioned seeing a lot of single moms and that sort of thing, is there ever a need to make referrals? So if you notice something that could lend to a potential domestic violence situation, are there moments where you guys need to make referrals to social services or any other organizations?
I would say that's within our realm, but I haven't, since I've been with Hands for Hunger, seen that particular situation. But I wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibilities, just because of, like I said, the holistic approach. And the approach that means that the people who work in the pantry are pretty familiar with what's going on in the regular people's lives. So that's a good point to bring up.
And the other ways, so are people sometimes referred to you by social services, or is there ever is there ever a time that someone else may refer someone to you?
All the time. And that's how we, the word gets around, not just by word of mouth, but by somebody literally calling and saying, okay, I know somebody who has a need, and, can they get involved? And of course, it normally goes back to the person has to make the approach themselves. Again, because of confidentiality and all of these things and the information. So yes, but it goes back to the person signing up, or, obviously if they're unable, for us working around that, but the person signing up on the website or calling the pantry and making that step.
So it doesn't have to be a professional referral. It could be.
No, not at all. Anybody can sign up, and anybody can refer someone else to the pantry. We just want to meet the need. And see, so that means the door is so open. And so we have to make sure we have the capacity to keep giving the way we do.
So someone asked on Facebook, does Hands for Hunger also do campaigns in schools? You did talk about the, school lunch program.
And the Helping Hands clubs.
Yes.
So yes.
Do you want to just talk about them a little bit more?
Yeah, so okay, so the school pantry, we have 15 pantries around Nassau in different government, primary schools, and high schools. And this is what I've been doing this week for the month of November, distributing with Jason, our driver, our pantry items. We deliver soups and noodles and snacks, so that children who don't have lunch can just go to their guidance counselor and ask for them. And what they should do is make the cup noodles, make the food for them, and give it to them. And part of that they're supposed to be reporting on a monthly basis in terms of what they do with the items and how they're getting on. And at least with going around, at least I can get the word of mouth in the first instance and a conversation in terms of how that's going. The Helping Hands Club is something that we're working on and looking at reassessing, and that's for students. So for example, I recently went to, I want to say CH Reeves, to a club fair day where Hands for Hunger set up a group because the Helping Hands Club is present in that school and they run the club. The teacher is in charge of it. They meet on a regular basis. They get community service hours. We encourage them to do things like collecting their own canned goods or food items, growing gardens, and seeing how they can, brainstorm ways that they can affect their community. I want to say another thing in terms of we encourage them to think about what it would be like to face food insecurity. And that's another thing that goes back to empathy. So it's not just that you're watching your mommy buy extra corned beef and peas and carrots from the food store, but you're imagining, well, what are the types of foods that I would like people to give if my family were facing food insecurity? Perhaps this is my favorite type of snack, right? And so, yes, you can donate that. And it helps you relate to people more and know that food insecurity is not something far off that only happens to other people, but it can happen to any of us.
Love a teachable moment. That's great. Another Facebook question: are you teaching or promoting the need for food security to children, i.e. backyard farming?
Yes, I can say that. And, perhaps with more engagement with those schools, because like I said, the guidance counselors and the different teachers reach out a lot in terms of their projects for BGCSE and BJCs. And so that's one of the ways, especially that we encourage them to engage, because a lot of the government schools have their own farms. And I suppose it could be stressed that they could do this in their backyard as well.
Mm-hmm. So is it that you or your team will go in and give a talk in the schools, or you facilitate with the counselors or teachers to sort of get that information out?
Sometimes that's the case. We could come in and give a talk. I know there's one school in November that wants that. They're having a harvest service, but also she wants me to come in and talk to them and their Helping Hands Club. So whereas we do want to encourage them to get creative about how to engage, we're also very open to coming in from time to time to do some of the engaging work. And our truck, like certain times of the year, again, like harvest, certain schools already have that relationship where they'll call us and say, can we have some of your boxes and bags? We need to, and then Jason, who is our local celebrity, everybody knows Jason on the truck, right? And so he'll come in and they'll take photos. They love to take photos on the truck and things like that and put their boxes on.
Someone on the Facebook Live is shocked that government schools have the farms, and I'm surprised myself, but it's a good thing to hear.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many of them do it, but I know that they, I know, of a few in particular. And because it's not just the Family Islands. Now the Family Islands, we know they do it really well. But yeah, they do it on Nassau as well.
That's great. And they sell their produce.
Yes.
Lovely. In lieu of questions from anyone else, I wanted to ask, with, the holidays coming up, is there anything that you guys are doing differently It's just, in the closeout of the year.
So this is going to be my first time during the holidays with Hands for Hunger. And so I am taking note of, the calendar. And I mentioned one event that's going to be in November in terms of the breastfeeding talk, just because the breastfeeding foundation lady actually resides on Apico. And that's when she's coming in Nassau. But that's one thing that's happening that last week. And as far as I understand, the pantry has some special, they call their pantry clients for some special holiday items, apart from the regular groceries. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that is. Maybe we could fit one or two, like I said before, for anyone who's on here, that I'm definitely, as the outreach coordinator, open to hearing creative ways that we can engage the community. So if you know that you're interested in not only volunteering, but you have a special skill, maybe you're a chef and you want to come in and do a demonstration of a healthy holiday meal, or maybe a really unhealthy but tasty holiday meal. Um, I don't know, maybe I don't know, your tennis club or something, you want to come in and talk about fitness and health and nutrition, things like that. We could work it out. And I'm also going to put that my outreach coordinator line in the chat. I was looking
Yes,
for my work phone.
I think, Jessica, while people think of their questions, comments, challenges, ideas, just a little commercial break, because I know Kelly referenced Keisha, who, I mean, if you know Keisha, then you stan Keisha. Keisha Ellis is the real deal. And so many people, so many women in particular, do more than one thing. So now everybody might know her as the Hands for Hunger director. Keisha also wrote this incredible book, which is a guide to the Bahamian Constitution. It's called The People's Constitution. I think right now it's probably priced around $12, and you can probably get it at Logos Chapter 1. And I think it was in the one in that Cable Beach Plaza with near Burger King and stuff. But get your hands on this book. It's great for getting a better understanding of the Constitution and really reading it in a layperson's terms. Very important for any kind of advocacy, activism, understanding your rights, and civic education. We could do a lot better. Shout out to Keisha.
Shout out to Keisha, who's in a political science class right now.
I love that. When she said commercial break, I thought it would have been for Equality Bahamas. That's great. I'll be looking out for the book somewhere in Freeport. Okay, so Kelly shared her contact information in the chat, and any other ways that people could get in touch with you or Hands for Hunger for questions and or how to support, if you could put it in the chat.
Handsforhunger.org. You can sign up for food assistance. You can sign up to volunteer. You can sign up to donate. You can sign up to for different things. Oh, to be a volunteer for Paradise Plates when it comes up again. So check out our website.
Sometimes we hear sign up like online and we think nobody's ever going to read this. How often do you check the sign up?
The links go to a form that refreshes when when somebody new signs up. Our info at Hands for Hunger will get a notification. Yeah, mommy, high tech. Yeah.
You're not in the business of ignoring people.
No,
ma'am. So in the last few minutes, while anyone thinks of another question, I'll just mention that on November 20th, we have our Feminist Book Club. It's not too late to sign up. The link should be in the chat. If not at the start, hopefully Elise will include it now. We'll be doing the Resilience Myth. We also have upcoming our 16 Days of Activism campaign, and you can sign up for those events. They include a session on CEDAW with Marian Bethel, a day of art and relaxation at NAGB, and printmaking at Ponciana Paper Press. And I'm hoping to attend them, not virtually, from Freeport. Some events are virtual. So people in the Family Islands like myself can join those. More info you can find at tiny.cc/16days24, which is in the chat now. Any questions, anyone? Or Kelly, is there anything you want to say before we close, maybe?
Just to say thank you thank you for thinking of, Hands for Hunger. And I don't think I stressed it before, but we do serve a lot of women, not just women with children, but, like I said before, women that are differently abled, women who have varying life circumstances. And even if Equality Bahamas, wanted to come in and do something with our pantry clients, your scope of work, that would be really good.
I do have a feeling we'll be calling you shortly.
I like the confetti.
All right, Alicia, any closing remarks?
Thank you to Kelli for joining us and talking about Hands for Hunger. Hands for Hunger is one of our favorites, so shout out to Hands for Hunger. And food security is really so important. I don't think we're talking about it enough at the national level. So it's great to have Kelli here to kind of elevate this conversation and also make it really practical and help people to understand what Hands for Hunger is doing on a daily basis. So folks with the means, I hope that you'll get in touch with Kelli to talk about ways that you can contribute, whether time, money, talent, whatever it may be. And we will definitely, as a team, think about what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some things. Yeah.
I have a personal passion for like letting food be your medicine in a way, and I don't know how we can, but yeah, eating for your health. And I know that that's obviously with food insecurity, that's an insurmountable obstacle sometimes, but that might be a nice one.
Mm-hmm. And remember, remember to overcome the obstacle of your own insecurities. Anybody who's in need, if you say you're in need of assistance, then Hands for Hunger has to, help. And so please, if you know somebody facing food insecurity, or you yourself, if you're out of a job for this month, or you're just on hard time, reach out and get your appointment. It's really quick, and it's easier than people think.
Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for the work that you do. And I hope you have a good evening.
Thanks. Don't forget the video. It's just very short. Can I still play it?
Videos are, yes, please. Okay. You should have access to that.
Very good that I could find it on my page. Okay,
We'll say the links again, everybody, for our Feminist Book Club is tiny.cc/FBC2024. And we're on our last book for the month. Again, it's The Resilience Myth by Soraya Chemaly. And she'll actually be joining us for the second half of the discussion. So very exciting. Wednesday, November 20th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then for the Global 16 Days campaign event lineup, go to tiny.cc/16days24. We have about a dozen events, so you'll definitely find something that you're interested in.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic lights. And I really wanna know, if I will ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high, even if the sky is falling down.
All right, see, I told you it was short. Thank you, guys. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. That was a beautiful video. The part where it says attendance increased by 60%. Wow. It
You'd
shows.
be surprised the children who are not sent to school because they don't have the lunch. Yeah.
Thank you for the work that you do and for joining us tonight. Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.